We have government systems that were built 200 plus years ago. We have infrastructures that were built 50 and 60 plus years ago. This whole globalization, this expansive finance that we have, just so many things have just really come on in about the last 25 to 30, 40 years tops.
Mm-hmm.
And we are just having a hard time keeping up with it all. It is like literally like trying to get a drink of water out of a fire hose. And it's no wonder that we're kind of that we are currently kind of hitting the wall. We're going to hit the wall a little bit. And, we can figure it out, but it's going to, the thing that's a little disturbing to me right now is, we don't seem to have the collective will that you would have seen back in the World War II days and the World Wars, where people would sacrifice and really try to just suck it up and work together. We have spurts of that, like after 9/11 and some times like that, but they don't last very long.
Right.
We're going to really have to get back with that. We're going to need each other. I tell students all the time, build these networks, LinkedIn, just all these things. You're going to need people. And, like with me, what got me my job in academia was a weak tie link. It wasn't a strong tie link. It was a weak tie link. And it was a person I would have never, and you can't imagine how many times, Sloan, that I heard those stories in my research. It was the person that I would have least expected that had the most impact on me getting a job.
Yeah.
I interviewed hundreds of people that lost their jobs in 2008 in that economic crisis. And I heard that over and over again, how many times it was their weak tie links that really made the most difference in getting them re-engaged, getting them reemployed. So, build those networks, your families, so many people have just gotten to where they're their own island and they don't feel like families or communities are important. I think we're going to need all of that. I saw instances of all of that, just that backup and that support that just made a huge difference in helping people get back on their feet at times when they were teetering a little bit.
I totally agree in that. It just seems that we have this vision of how things are going to go, but the universe, whatever you want to call it, has a way of surprising us. And, people who we least expect it sometimes are our biggest champions.
Yeah.
Your book allows readers to utilize some of your research to determine their convulsive environment quotient. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, it's actually convulsive economic quotient.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. It's pretty close. Actually on my website, it's larrystraub.com. It has all of the information on the book itself, but it's also got some links on there. One of the links on there allows you to take the survey that I did for my quantitative research for my doctoral studies. And it has the 9 categories that I have for what I call the Promethean framework. Those are those 9 things that I think everybody needs to take care of. Again, relationships, your physical and mental abilities, just lifelong learning, those type of things. It gives you, it does a measurement. It's 76 questions, probably takes about maybe 15, 20 minutes, and it'll actually give you a score in each of those areas, and then it gives you a cumulative score. And that's what I refer to as a convulsive economic quotient, and it'll show you in each of those categories what your score is. And basically, if you score 80% or up, just kind of like in school, you're probably in pretty good shape. Just kind of continue to backfill those areas and things like that. If you're scoring 60% in an area, it's probably an area you need to, take care of. A lot of us, it's our, our physical fitness and stuff, our exercise regimens, things like that. So it'll just kind of give you those kind of scores, let you know areas that you kind of need to beef up a little bit, maybe areas you need to, continue to build and strengthen. So it's a really neat instrument. It'll just give you a really nice look at kind of how you are positioned and maybe how you be positioned for the future.
Yeah, that's and it's interesting doing something like that, answering the questions, because I think a lot of times we think we have an idea, but it's not until we really actually start to look in these different areas of our life that we see, wait a minute, I'm actually not doing the thing that I want to do in this area of my life. So, I'll definitely link to your website in the show notes so the listeners can easily access that.
Thank you.
Yes. So, just a couple more questions before we wrap up. What would you say surprised you the most in your research?
You know, I'll be real honest with you. Of all of the people I talked to, all of the stories on when I ended my interviews, I would always give these folks my phone number
Mm-hmm.
because I just wanted them to call me and update me. I gave them my
Yeah.
cell phone number, and I probably heard back from about maybe a third of them.
Okay.
Um, and they would call and excitedly tell me they got their life kind of on the right track again. They got jobs, things like that, but they weren't all happy endings. There were people that God, it's sad. They weren't very well positioned. They really got their props knocked out from under them. I guess the thing that surprised me the most was just how close we all are to humility.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
how many things we don't control and how quickly these lives that we think we built can kind of potentially, you know, get kind of the props knocked out from under them. And that's the thing I've never forgotten. I've never, I'm sure not as cocky as I was
Yeah.
before. Not
Yeah.
that I was really cocky, I don't think anyway, but I learned a lot from that, and I just saw it's kind of a there but the grace of God go I moment for me,
Yeah.
and you saw some of these folks, you could tell they were scared. They were almost panicky. I had one woman that kind of started hyperventilating when she was telling her
Mm-hmm.
story.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I noticed too was, and this is the thing that is just so brutally severed in many of these instances, it's the importance of work families. Sloan, we
Yeah.
don't we don't realize, we build these little family units within our workplaces, and
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, many times people they get kind of unceremoniously booted, and security walks them out with their box of goods, and they don't
Right.
see these people much, if any, ever again. And so it's like losing so much of their identity and almost a family in a way. So that that was really something that really opened my eyes as well.
Yeah. And that's a big, especially if people, if you're a person whose life is focused on work and that gets taken away from you. I've
Yeah,
experienced that too with people I worked with who, they're like, I don't know who I am anymore now that I
yeah,
don't have this job.
yeah,
And that's, and I love the reminder of the humility too, because again, we can't control everything. And I think that helps us appreciate what we have. It helps us remind us to appreciate our
yeah,
everyday, right? Because we
yeah.
never know. We never know. Who would you say your book would appeal to and why?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I actually, when I started doing this research, I had it more focused on mid-career
Mm-hmm.
folks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'll be honest with you, I think it really can apply to really all different sectors, but I think probably mid-career is definitely a
Mm-hmm.
good target market for this. But at the same time, I'm working just as hard as ever. I have this as one of the textbooks in about three of my classes,
Mm-hmm.
two grad, one undergrad, and even a doctoral level class that I teach. And I just, I really try to get this. It's our senior class at my university, Newman University, is strategic planning or
Mm-hmm.
strategic management, and I teach that class. I use this. This is the last class these business school majors take before they graduate, and I use this as one of the two textbooks in it. And we spend about a third of the semester on it. I have them do the surveys. We talk about the results, and we talk about how they need to position themselves. So the best way to deal with the problem is to head it off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we can get these students positioned and get the foundations under them, and first of all, we got to get the light bulbs turned on. We got to
Yes.
get them to understand the importance of all of this. That just makes a huge difference. So yeah, I do think it's got a pretty broad spectrum of folks that I think can benefit from it. But I really think probably the college age up to mid career probably is the sweet spot.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, and it sounds like from this could for especially for college age people who aren't maybe they don't have the life experience to understand. So if you understand this early on, it seems like you're better prepared and set up for the rest of your life. And and again, it goes back to that adaptability that we talked about in the positivity because you have the tools to be able to understand how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Straub, I want to thank you for joining us today. Dr. Larry Straub is the author of the book, The Sixth Evolution. And before we close out today, what do you hope the readers learn or take away after reading your book?
Well, I just really hope that they can gain an appreciation that, you know, we need to stay tough. We need to stay on our A game. We need to continue to grow and learn no matter what stage of life we're in. One of the things I talk about in the book is I think people are going to probably, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think people are going to need to work longer.
Mm-hmm.
This retirement at 62 and 65, when those dates were set up, they expected people to live maybe another 5 years or 7 years time. They
Yeah.
weren't set up for a society where people are averaging 80 plus years of age now, and that's continuing to increase. So, and frankly, I don't know that retirement is that good for us. I think
Yeah.
we need something to stimulate both socially, physically, and intellectually. And I think our brains, they've proven we have these little TIAs, these little mini strokes throughout our life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you have that intellectual resiliency and you're accountable for some results, I think your brain builds new neural networks around those little dead ends that get forced in your brain. And I think so intellectual vitality, I think, is just crucial for all of us at all stages of our life. So I think just stay tough, stay on top of your game, and be prepared to go for the long haul. I think we're going to have disruptions in mid-career at times, and it's going to maybe alter our career on the end of it, to where we may have to work a little longer. We may have to stay active in the workplace a little bit longer. So that's some of the big things I would take, and hopefully people will just get a little different framework in mind as they move forward with their careers and their lives.
Yes. Well, Larry, I want to thank you again for joining us today and being our guest on Books on Air.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yes. You can find more about the book, The Sixth Evolution, on Amazon, and I'll link to the book and also Larry's website in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. You've been listening to the Books on Air podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. You can also hear this podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. I'm Sloan Fremont, and I hope you'll join us for the next Books on Air podcast. Remember, you never know who's going to be here, and you never know what we're going to talk about. Thank you so much for listening.